Hello, and welcome to the literary analysis of Illusions Tales of a Reluctant Messiah by Richard Bach. In this section, we'll be discussing Chapter 4. Chapter 4 is really one of my most favorite chapters in this book. And one of the reasons why is because it brings in this idea of metafiction, right? What metafiction is, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the term, it is the idea that a work of fiction, a book, a story, is aware that it's a story. It knows that it's being told or being written down. And one of the things that I like to compare it to is if you've ever seen the movie Deadpool, there's moments where he'll stop and turn to the camera and break the fourth wall. And he's talking directly to you, the viewer, and it's as if Deadpool knows that he's in a movie of Deadpool, right? And the way that Richard Bach does this in this book is that Donald Shimoda gives the character Richard a book, the Messiah's Handbook, the Savior's Manual. So you have a character in a book reading about another book, which, like I said, creates these layers of metafiction, right? So in this section, Donald Shimoda tells Richard Richard asks him, is there some kind of manual or something? How do you know all these rules about being a Messiah and that you're a Messiah? And he says, yeah, here's this book, the Messiah's Handbook. And I want to read some of these sections because they're absolutely wonderful, right? So Richard opens it up, and the first thing he reads is, perspective, use it or lose it. If you turn to this page, you're forgetting that what is going on around you is not reality. Think about that, right? Perspective, use it or lose it. If you turn to this page, you're forgetting that what is going on around you is not reality. Think about that. That's a big part of this book. Obviously, it's titled Illusions, right? This life that we live in, this world that we live, is in part an illusion. And so I'd like you all to, as you're reading this, especially the stuff in the Messiah's Handbook and the larger book Illusions, I'd like you to actually try some of these things that are presented in this book. Try them in your own life. See if they work. Usually in my class, we do try this, and I get about 50 to 70% of the people that try some of these things, it actually works for them. Now, this isn't a self-help book by any means, right? This is a work of fiction. But sometimes that fiction becomes, and this is a quote from the book, that fiction becomes more powerful than the reality. It's more real than the reality, right? That's a paraphrase more than a quote from the book. But the fiction that we read is more real than the actual reality. So as you're going through and reading this book, consider trying some of the things that are presented here, right? And think about what it is that this Messiah's Handbook is saying. So to continue that section, remember where you came from, where you're going, and why you created the mess you got yourself in the first place. You're going to die a horrible death. Remember, it's all good training, and you'll enjoy it more if you keep the facts in mind, which is something, of course, that we do not want to think about. And especially now that we're in the middle of this coronavirus, COVID-19, the possibility that we might die, that we might catch this disease and that's the end of our lives. We have to keep in mind in our perspective that we're going to die anyways. All of us are going to die. Hopefully not from this disease, but some of us might. Some of us might die in car accidents, or die from cancer, or die from the number one cause of death in the United States, which is heart disease. From eating bad our entire lives, right? At some point, we're going to die. Maybe we just die from old age. Very beautiful, like at the end of uh, the Godfather, right? When he dies in the field, when he's playing with his grandchildren. We're all going to die. And I love the fact that the Messiah's Handbook says you're going to die a horrible death, right? Because I don't think there is any other death. It reminds me of when my grandmother passed away very recently, and she helped raise myself and my siblings, and especially early on in our childhood, she was really the only one that was there consistently. And so I loved her not just like as a grandmother, but I also loved her like a mother. And she died this very beautiful death where her entire family was around her as they took her off the breathing machines. And she was in her 90s, and she was already fading away, and we all came together and hugged her and stood over her and saw her pass. And it was very beautiful. All of her children were there, and her grandchildren were there. And even though that death was very beautiful, there's still something horrible about it. She still did that little, I don't mean to call it little, she still did the death rattle, the death shake. It was almost as if you can physically see that moment when the life left her body. And I compare that to how my mother passed away, who passed away from cancer. Very different. She died in a hospital, cold, alone. We were all there, but it wasn't the same. We weren't able to stand around her for her last moment. The doctors came in and said, okay, well, she's gone. And even those deaths are horrible. So keep that in mind. We're all going to die. This COVID-19 sort of becomes this memento mori, this reminder that our time here is limited. And I think once we keep that in perspective, that our time here is limited, you'll see that you kind of change your attitude towards people. Little things that bother you, oh, I don't like the way that person chews their gum, I don't like the way, you realize are very inconsequential. So keep that in mind as you read some of the stuff in this Messiah's Handbook. The next quote is, take your dying with some seriousness, however. Laughing on the way to your execution is not generally understood by less advanced life forms, and they'll call you crazy. Which I think is hilarious, right? This idea that some people know they're going to die and they accept it and they laugh at it. I don't think people can understand that concept, right? People get, yeah, they'll call you crazy for doing that. So I'm gonna read all of the quotes in this, and then we'll discuss some of them as we go along. Learning is finding out what you already know, and doing is demonstrating that you know it. Teaching is reminding others that they know it just as well as you. You are all learners, doers, and teachers. And of course, as an educator, this one hits home, right? Reminding others that they know it just as well as you. And I always think about this, especially when I ask my students to do a research paper, right? Because it's called research. And the word research starts with R-E, to do it again. To research something, to find something that you've lost or forgotten, and then to re-find it, to research it, right? As students, you all know just as much as I know. Maybe you forgot, or maybe, I don't know. I guess that's part of it, right? I'm here to show you all how to find that information again, because someone showed me how to find that information again. Your only obligation in any lifetime is to be true to yourself. Being true to anyone else or anything else is not only impossible, but the mark of a fake Messiah. which I think for students is an important quote, because a lot of you are in school not because you want to be in school, but because your parents told you, well, now you're done with high school, you got to go to college, and that's your next step. Which, of course, if you're in college because of that, I think the chances of you succeeding and getting your degree, getting that piece of paper with your name signed on it, are greatly reduced. You have to be in school as an adult because you want to learn something, and you have to be hungry for that knowledge in order to succeed. The simplest questions are the most profound. Where were you born? Where is your home? And where are you going? What are you doing? Think about these once in a while and watch your answers change. You teach best what you most need to learn. Live never to be ashamed if anything you do or say is published around the world, even if what is published is not true. Your friends will know you better in the first minute that you meet than your acquaintances will know you in 1,000 years. And then this is one of my all-time favorites. The best way to avoid responsibility is to say, I've got responsibilities. Which, if you notice, when you go to work, or even in your own families, people will always be saying, I'm busy. I'm so busy. I'm so busy with work. I'm so busy. And a big reason that they say that is because they don't want you to ask them to do something else. Right? And I get it a lot as an educator. Oh, mister, it's because I had so much homework from my other class that I couldn't do your homework. Right? The best way to avoid responsibility is to say that you've got a lot of responsibility. And then people think, oh, wow, you have a lot of responsibility. I better not give you any more. So keep that in mind, especially like at work. I see it all the time from coworkers, not just as an educator, but in all the other jobs that I've had in my lifetime. I'm so busy, I can't do that. I'm too busy to do that. And then you turn around and there are people there on their phone for 30 minutes. You're like, I thought you were too busy. Oh, yeah, I am really busy, right? And then Donald says this, which I think is very interesting. He says, Richard says, I noticed something strange about the book. The pages do not have numbers on them, Don. No, he said, you just open it to whatever you need most, and whenever you need most is there. A magic book? No, you can do it with any book. You can do it with an old newspaper if you read carefully enough. Haven't you done that? Had some problem in your mind, then open a book handy and see what it tells you? No. Well, try it sometime. I tried. I closed my eyes and I wondered what was going to happen to me if I stayed much longer with this strange person. It was fun to be with him, but I couldn't shake the sense that something not fun at all was going to happen to him before long, and I didn't want to be around when it did. Thinking that, I opened the book with my eyes still closed, and then opened them and read. You are led through your lifetime by the inner learning creature, the playful spiritual being that is your real self. Don't turn away from the possible futures before you're certain you don't have anything to learn from them. You're always free to change your mind and to choose a different future or a different past. So, like I mentioned at the beginning of this discussion, try the things that are presented in this book. Just give them a try. And this is one of my favorite things to try. I wish we were all in class and I can ask you to do this in person. But since we're not and you're having to listen to this, try it at home. Leave a comment if it works for you, or leave a comment if it doesn't. But what I'd like you to do is to take a few minutes and to think of a problem that you're having in life. It doesn't have to be a serious problem. It can be something small like, I don't know, I'm making a sandwich and I'm out of mayonnaise, right? It can be a simple problem or it can be a complex problem. And I want you to think about it and meditate on that for 20, 30 seconds and just think about that problem. And then grab any book around It can be this illusions book that's in you. It can be a book on mathematics. It can be a book on geography. Any book that you have lying around. And after you've thought about this idea for a few seconds, after you've thought about this for a few moments, I want you to open that book to whatever page, a random page. Just smash your fingers in there and open that book and start reading. And see if it doesn't provide some type of answer for you, for whatever that problem is. So, like I said, keep on reading this wonderful book. And as you do, try some of these things. See how they change your perspective. Thank you for listening.